Hey, good morning and welcome to our special webinar as we are navigating disruption. This is presented by the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America. My name is Matt Priest, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president and CEO of FDRA. Have been in existence for 77 years, and our desire is to connect footwear brands and solution providers and to understand the best ways to support the industry and to navigate a variety of different variables. And disruption has almost become an understatement of these times, right? Because there's so many variables that feel like they're once in a lifetime, once in a generation, and they've all kind of landed in our collective laps. And we're continuing to try to figure out the best way to navigate through this disruption. And so I'm super excited to have our speakers today. And before I get to introducing them, I want to walk through a few housekeeping items to make sure that this session is as effective a use of your time as possible. And we want you to be a part of the conversation. And so we encourage you, if you have questions, please submit those. And you can submit them in the Q&A portal on your screen or via the chat box as well. Both options are open to you. Heck, if you have my personal cell phone number, you can text them to me. All the above will work. And I'm happy to present those questions at the end of our discussion. But our guests today have a lot to say about how they have partnered in ways that help navigate disruption using technology, data, and the like. And so I want to introduce our partners in crime, if you will. First and foremost, I have Lisa Laich, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Rockport, and Stephen Holt, who's the Rockport brand president, sitting to her right. And we're also joined by Jim Shea, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at First Insight. And so without further ado, Jim, I will turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Matt. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And thanks to our friends at Rockport for joining us. As you said, Matt, that it seems like using the word disruption is a bit of an understatement, kind of an overused word. And it probably would apply to just about any webinar in the retail and footwear industry these days. But it certainly applies today. And last year, if you think about it, it was the consumer, right? Because the consumer wasn't buying. The question is, will they come back? What will they be buying when they come back? When will they come back? This year, it's different. The customer is clearly back and buying, but they're buying things differently. The prices they're willing to pay are different. There's an increased trend toward casualization. And, so the disruption is also in the supply chain. Everybody is facing challenges in getting product, shipping costs going up, et cetera. So a lot of disruption. We're going to talk about all of that today, and we'll talk about how using data and insights can help retailers and footwear companies in particular make better decisions and in some of these critical areas to navigate these challenges. And we're going to focus more on product today than anything else. We'll talk about assortments, pricing, and how you can use data pre-season to make some of these better decisions. So I would like to introduce and give a little more background on our panelists over there at Rockport in the newsroom, the Rockport newsroom.
That's right.
We have Stephen and Lisa, and I will let you introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Laich. I'm Rockport's Chief Marketing Officer. I've been here at Rockport now for just a little over 2 years, and it's certainly been a dynamic 2 years. It's been great. So in my role here, I oversee the branding, creative, trade marketing functions, as well as our Rockport.com business. Before joining Rockport, I actually spent most of my career in brand management roles at large food and beverage marketing organizations. And it was there that I really learned the value of listening to the consumer to help inform product development and really using robust research models to help refine and optimize product launches, everything from product design, understanding what features and benefits were important, figuring out the pricing, and even all the way up to the marketing plans that would help, really successfully launch new products. So I was really happy when Rockport started working with First Insight at a very opportune time, right pre the pandemic, as it really kind of gives us now a really robust platform to test all of those things throughout the product development cycle.
Absolutely. So Jim, Matt, thank you for the wonderful warm welcome. And I think I should start my piece by just saying good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you calling in from around the world. It's lovely to have you all. I am Steve Holt. I'm the Global Brand President for the Rockport Company. I've worked with Rockport now twice in my career. First in the 90s and the early 2000s, and then came back a few years ago as the head of our international business and recently assumed the role of brand president. Look, I'm incredibly passionate and optimistic about the future of our wonderful brand. You know, we have an amazing legacy, and actually it is our 50th anniversary.
The brand looks pretty good for 50, huh? Doesn't look a day over 25.
Are you talking about my age? No, stop it. Sorry about that. But we do have, 50 years anniversary this year. We're really proud of that. We have an incredibly strong base of brand advocates literally all over the globe. And like Lisa said, I also get excited, by all the great brand strategy work we have been doing here at Rockport, which, I think has certainly, been, it's enabled us to, leverage the power of refining and optimizing, our product ranges and our collections, using that real-time consumer feedback, which is so important. Yeah. We've been instilling that new mindset, into our organization, over the past year. And I know for sure it's absolutely made us, better at adapting to that ever-evolving landscape we've all been in since COVID first appeared, unfortunately. But, First Insights has really helped us, navigate, these challenging times. So over to you, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Lisa. And thanks for being with us today. And I'm Jim Shea. I'm Chief Commercial Officer for First Insight. I handle marketing strategy and sales for the company. I've been with First Insight for a little over 10 years. So these questions that we're going to talk about today are always important, but why are they really important now? Well, first is that the consumer, particularly in retail footwear apparel, is always moving quickly. It's always hard to keep up with the consumer and figure out what they want, but it's even more critical right now. And there's less room for error given what we're going through. And so speed and accuracy is really important. The big difference here is that, historical data is always important, always has been important and useful. But if you think about what's happened over the last 18 months, there hasn't been a lot of historical precedent for that, much less what's going to happen over the next year. So gathering new data on the consumer, where the consumer's headed, what they want, what they don't want, is really important. And one of the key questions we're getting asked right now to help with is about pricing. With costs increasing, shipping costs increasing, how much of that cost increase can you pass on to the consumer in terms of price increases versus how much does the brand have to absorb themselves? And what's that price elasticity? So that's just an example of some of the value that we're adding these days at First Insight and some of the projects that we're doing. So what I'd like to do is, Stephen, you mentioned a little bit about the 50-year anniversary and what's going on with Rockport. I think most people know of Rockport as a brand that represents comfort and walking, but tell us a little bit more about what's going on at the company these days, if you would.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jim. Really exciting times. And as I mentioned earlier, the Rockport brand is one with deep heritage and history, and no more jokes about the 50 years. It was founded in 1971 on the idea that style and comfort should go hand in hand. And that core belief led Rockport to I would say, become the first, first brand to infuse dress shoes with sport comfort technology, literally reinventing shoe design forever. So we're really proud of that fact. But today, we've obviously evolved, over those 50 years, and Rockport can be found in various retail channels in more than 60 countries worldwide. We have a very, very strong international business as well, of course, as a strong domestic business. We're building on decades of experience, and I strongly feel that Rockport continues to deliver extraordinary technology based comfort, and that's incorporating the latest advances in construction and design into both the modern and classic shoe styles. So a little bit about the company, but we're very excited about the future, Jim.
Great. And so thanks, Stephen. We've been working together for a little over a year now. And if you think back to before we engaged together, can you share with the group what led you to move to digital product testing with First Insight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'd say, gosh, like most brands, right? The last 18 months has shown us just how important it is to always stay kind of dialed in, to the evolving consumer and category landscape. I mean, I think that's really key, and we have to be conscious, and we have to focus on that. And after 50 years, in this business, we had to throw out, all our playbooks. And, in a lot of ways, the old way wasn't going to work anymore. So instead, we got to, create the new playbook, right, Lisa?
Yep.
And one that leaned more heavily, I would say, on the voice of the consumer. And I allowed time in our development process, to test was key, to learn, iterate and optimize to help us deliver the best product, for the right consumer at the right value proposition. So, it was also important, given the supply chain challenges that, we've all encountered, and, it's been a bit of a nightmare for all of us, to make the right decisions around what we buy and what we launch, at the right time. So, some really interesting conversations taking place. So, by leveraging that consumer data, we had, the confidence to lean into select programs, making those, I would say, Jim, those big ideas, even bigger, and creating efficiency, not only in our supply chain, but across all our commercial functions. That was really important. And I would just, finally, I'd just say, another key strategic initiative Rockport has been undergoing for the past few seasons has been rationalizing our product assortment. That has also been key. I've talked about our heritage, the long heritage that we have, and our vast distribution globally in those 60 countries. We have always had a robust assortment and a very, very long tail.
Very long.
So, we've had to cut the tail, and there was a need during COVID to be, simply more efficient and to optimize our line. And the First Insight tool, is one that can help us understand what products are most valued by the consumer. What do they really want in these challenging times? And which ones are simply redundant? And, if they're redundant, they should come out of the line. So that's really kind of has been a key focus for us, Jim.
if I can just add, Steve, I mean, I think that phrase "voice of the consumer" is something we have just been saying over and over and over. And I think, we brought First Insight in at a time where we had just sort of completed a pretty significant brand strategy piece of work, body of work. We really dialed in on who our consumer is. And now we're over investing in listening to that consumer. We know who we're designing for. It's not everybody. That's okay. We know who our consumer is, and we want to make sure that we're always keeping them kind of at the forefront of our product, branding, marketing decisions.
Absolutely.
So it's been just such a great sort of a new lens we've brought in over the last 12 to 18 months. And then in addition, I think what Steve said, there's also been tremendous value in First Insight from both a sell and marketing perspective. And we saw that immediately when we first started the conversations with First Insight a little over a year ago. First is we obviously saw the huge potential to leverage this consumer data in working with our retailer partners. Helps us make sure that when we have those conversations with them, we have that voice of the consumer, we have some data to help us sell in the right programs, those that we believe the consumer will best respond to. I like to call it like pre-approval, right? It's consumer pre-approved. And then the other piece of it is really helping us align on the pricing and promotional strategies that, both the brand and the retailer can set in place so that we're really kind of meeting the consumer's value expectation and just as importantly, our margin expectations.
Yes, just a little bit, Lisa.
And then in the marketing side, I think this is really cool too. We had some fun in the marketing team, really thinking of how to use First Insight in some out of the box ways. I think we've just really embraced this idea that First Insight is as a platform that gives us a portal to the consumer's mind. What's more valuable than that? So anytime we've had a question about how the consumer might respond to something, we pose it to the First Insight community. So we've used it to help us identify what's the right branding or what's the right visual representation of the brand. And so we use it there. So it's less of just a judgment call and more like consumer based. And then we've also used some of the First Insight survey functionality to help us kind of better understand where the consumer's mindset is, as things have evolved over the last 12 to 18 months. And we had this great success. We did a survey around walking day. Clearly our brand has a lot of equity in that category. So we wanted to understand, we were hearing all this buzz that people were walking a lot more and they were using walking as a way to help their, physical health, their mental health, their social health. And so we tapped into First Insight to survey the consumer and got some really great insights, launched a great press release, got a ton of earned media from it. And in fact, it's the gift that keeps on giving. We were just in Vogue last week, which was very cool, on a super editorial piece. They were writing about walking and they mentioned our survey, our results from our survey. So it's just such a powerful tool across both product sales and marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it. And Stephen. So some people may be familiar with First Insight. Some of you may not. I think the way, Lisa, you phrased it, a portal into the consumer's mind, is a good way of describing it. Essentially, we're a cloud-based platform that takes the voice of the customer in different ways. We use email campaigns, we use third-party panels, social channels, and we collect data from the consumer in real time. We apply predictive analytics to the data. And the result is really used in a number of different areas. We have different consumer engagement tools. We'll show you an example of what one of them looks like here. But in all cases, we're trying to collect data very quickly from many, many consumers to help answer strategic questions. It could be about product. It could be also about things like messaging or a new logo or promotion strategy and things like that, some of the marketing questions that Lisa talked about. But we got started in product, and our focus tends to be in the product area and things surrounding product. What should the price be? How should that product be positioned? Things like that. And so we're going to show some examples of that here in a couple of minutes and how Rockport has leveraged the tool. The way it would appear to a consumer is, hey, Rockport wants to hear from you. Rockport's interested in getting your feedback. What do you think of these styles we're working on next season? And generally speaking, the consumer is very willing to engage and give feedback. They're excited, particularly in a brand like Rockport that's been around a long time, high brand affinity. People want to give feedback. And so when they start, there's some questions that get asked of the consumer. So these questions are used to segment the consumer and the data that's being collected in different ways. It could be by age or income level, sort of demographic type questions. It could be by region, but it can also be psychographic type questions. And things like when you head back to the office, how likely are you to continue wearing the casual footwear instead of dress footwear, right? A big question that everybody's asking these days. And so all of the data here is used then to segment the product related data on the back end. Product is then presented out to the consumer, and these can be a physical sample image. It could be a 2D CAD, a 3D CAD image, and we can use actual video. We can use rotating GIFs like this one here. We're going to describe the product. We're going to invite the consumer to give feedback on what do they think the consumer is willing to pay for the product, how do they feel about the product, and then tell us anything they want to say about the product, what they like about it, what they don't like about the product. And there's some other things we can add on to this engagement around what attributes are most important. What do they like specifically about the product? It could be material, it could be heel height, things like that. And then the results are available very quickly, and the platform has been designed to operate at the speed of retail. And typically when a CAD or a sample is available, the turnaround time to make a decision to go to the next stage, which is making the buy, may only be a week. And so we have to operate inside that sort of a time frame. So it's typically 24 to 72 hours later, these results are available, and very clear actionable insights on which products are likely to be the highest performers, which ones are likely to underperform, what prices consumers are willing to pay. You can look at price elasticity around that price point, what percentage of consumers are willing to pay more versus which ones will pay less. You can do some interactive analysis on, hey, if I did raise the price by $5, what would happen to the consumer demand? We can look at attributes, as I mentioned. So what attributes are working well, which ones are not working so well, but also which attributes are most important to the success of the product, which attributes are most predictive of the success of the product in the future. And then segmentation, as I mentioned, this is a fairly straightforward regional segmentation, but we can do it by demographic, we can do it by attitudinal characteristics and things like that. So a lot of the brands and retailers we work with will have a typing tool or some sort of a segmentation a strategy that they've already developed, and we map into that. Again, all the data here is easy to access through the cloud-based platform, and it's pretty quick, usually 24 to 72 hours. So let's turn back to Rockport, and I'll ask Lisa and Stephen maybe to tell us a little bit about how you've taken that data and actually used it in your business.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's been really impressive, actually, how we've been utilizing, First Insight and all the data. And just how fast, the team started to put the First Insights tool to work, and, across, the full range of activities from product concepting to design, selling, and even, the marketing activation, which Lisa talked about. First of all, good product development starts with a strong concept and the product brief. Our product and marketing teams, have partnered together on a few key programs to really understand the consumer that we are designing for at the end of the day, and what the person most wants and what the person truly values. This has helped us at the start of that development process to make sure, we're designing and engineering shoes that meet those consumers' most fundamental footwear needs. What is the consumer wanting? What is the consumer, what do they desire, at the end of the day? So, from there, we also have, leveraged First Insight to help us with our selling processes to the retailers, which has been really key. And for those of you out there who know ILR, initial line reviews, or FLRs, final line review, you'll know what I'm talking about. And, to be able to, look at product and test product at that time has been really phenomenal.
Totally. Yeah.
We're finding more and more retailers are responding favorably to product that has actually been tested. That's been approved, with consumers. We can have conversations with retailers, as we have done at the recent spring summer 2022 sell-in, and we have the first insight score, right, Lisa? And we're able to show the RPM gauge of, the green or the amber, and that's so impressive.
Yes.
And I mean, it's really impactful to be able to have those conversations with the retailers. And, there's just simply significant value in aligning the retailer pricing based on that consumer value, perception of that particular style. What are they prepared to pay for it, for example? Do they like the material? Do they like the color? This helps all of us make sure, we're focusing on those winners.
It's confidence, right?
It is. It is. It just gives us a lot of confidence. It gives the retailers a lot of confidence. And we joked a little bit earlier about the margin, but that's key, right? I mean, margin dollars are very important, throughout that value chain. And lastly, Jim, as Lisa kind of mentioned, we're also leveraging that consumer data in our marketing activations. It's so important to talk about the concepts. It's so important to talk about, the stories. How do we bridge the product, into those concepts and stories? And, Lisa and the team, they've found some clever ways to, tap into that consumer data, to generate some, media interest in the Rockport brand and the product collections. And Lisa just referenced, the article we had in Vogue recently, with some of our more casualized, walking product. That was a big win for us. So, really excited about that. And obviously Jim, we can illustrate, some examples of, how we've used First Insight to help us on this incredible journey from the concepts, to those activations.
That's great. Thank you, Stephen. And so you mentioned, talking about some examples. Let's go through a couple of those. And maybe for you, Lisa, you could tell us about this one here, which had to do with attributes and how to message the product, or waterproof or water resistant.
Yeah, this is a great case study. And I think this is, as Steve says, all the steps of the development process. We didn't just think of this as, just when products deciding what color to make the shoe. We thought of this kind of really soup to nuts from that concept all the way through to activation. And this is a great example to illustrate it. So, we had seen this explosion of waterproof shoes over the past few years. As you in the footwear industry know, this has been happening. And we were seeing some really great success with our own waterproof shoes. But again, those of you who know, waterproofing comes at a significant cost. So we really had sort of two key questions. First is, does the consumer, voice of the consumer, do they really value waterproofing as a feature enough to warrant that price premium? Or would they also be accepting of a product that was maybe water resistant, which we could offer at a lower price point? So we're just trying to understand, which way to prioritize. And secondly, the second question for us is, how should we talk about our waterproof technology? We have a brand, it's called HydroShield. We were just kind of curious, how important establishing or promoting that brand was, as we had our waterproof story. And we, curious if that would help us achieve that price premium level that we are looking for. So what we did, in part, we tested 3 concepts. And it was really focused more on the marketing, storytelling, the branding, the copy. And, we learned some interesting things here. I mean, I think first we learned that the consumer does incredibly value that waterproof attribute, and they are willing to pay more for it. But what we learned is it was really that extra branding, the Hydra Shield, that added this great technology kind of background to it, is what they really valued the most. It made it seem more technical, and there was more proof to it. So what we learned is 39% of those tested chose the Hydra Shield waterproof as their preferred choice. But it got even more interesting when we really focused in on the Rockport consumer, as I mentioned before, really making sure that we were designing and marketing from their perspective. That number actually jumped to 50%. So clearly we had a consumer who really valued waterproof. And really what we also learned is they'd be willing to pay more for it, a significant price premium for the Hydra Shield waterproof branding.
Yeah.
So it definitely informed, our product development. From there, we knew we could lean in and invest more in that waterproof attribute and target it as Hydra Shield. But we did also learn there is a consumer who was willing to sort of accept a lower tier, a water resistant shoe. You just couldn't charge as much for it. So it allowed us to sort of also bifurcate our waterproofing strategy, and make sure we had, the premium product for that consumer that values it, and a lower tier down for consumers who are more value and price conscious. So this has really become a big part of sort of how we've continued now to develop into that space.
And I think the key thing there, Lisa, is what you said about, the premium price point that can play in, say, the better department stores, for example.
Yep.
But then there's an opportunity just to take that down slightly, and then you can start to figure out in that architectural grid where you can play with a lesser price point, which could go, say, into the family channel.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is so helpful, because then you're looking at, your good, better, best, and you're tapping that into your retailers and where that product can be. So it's an incredible, added value tool. Yes. To be able to look at it that way, strategically.
Absolutely.
and engage, right consumer, right product, right consumer,
Yep.
right place.
Yep. Yep. It's a great point.
Mm-hmm. And so, Stephen, you were talking about earlier the different stages of your go-to-market process: initial line review, final line review, and how you use the
Yep.
platform during those different stages. So can one of you maybe talk about how that works at Rockport and how First Insight helps?
Yeah, certainly, Jim. So look, once we move from, concept into the product design, what we can immediately do, we can immediately, leverage First Insight data to help us, refine and optimize our final design. So that's incredibly powerful. We've leveraged the platform to help us understand, preferences across those design details, which are so important. The materializations, the sole color, just that in itself, if you have this data, you're being data driven, versus, I'm sure we've all been in this situation where people tend to, you just shoot from the hip.
Opinions, yeah.
And it's opinion, and they're all good opinions, but you then get too many opinions.
Yep.
But using First Insight, you're really able to home in and, hey, this is what the consumer's saying. So then, like I say, materializations, color. Then we look across, the range of silhouettes, to help inform which ones are the winners. We talked about that, the winners. And, compared to those that we may need more refinement, and it allows you to say, okay, well, we got this score,
Mm-hmm.
but, it wasn't bad.
Yep.
But if we take this away and we detail it, a little bit more, this could go from a score of 6 to a score of 9.
Yeah.
And we get the product right. So it's all about those, details at the end of the day. And I would say, lastly, we can understand what value the consumer places on the style so that we can ensure, we're able to meet that price, that value proposition, that value equation when the product gets out in the stores. So again, really powerful. And I think, more importantly, we can do all of this and hone in on our exact consumer target and the exact retailer we want to go after. So, at the end of the day, we have a good idea of how something will perform before we actually, truly invest behind it. So hope that answers the question, Jim.
No, that's great, Steve. And also, we work at First Insight with many of the retailers, and they're buying product from Rockport and many other footwear brands, and they tell us they really value the data when the brands bring it to them. So just confirming what you just said there on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
When here's a silhouette that you were looking to gain some confidence in, new women's product that you were working on, and maybe you could tell us a little about this one and how you used First Insight in this product development process.
I think this is a wonderful example to share with our audience today. This is it's a women's shoe, and that we've called Pro Walker Next, and we were actually considering launching this shoe in fall winter 2022. Those were our initial plans, but the product team kind of started to do a little bit of early development on here, and we wanted to know, at the end of the day, whether we can bring some into this shoe, some of that brand equity and expertise that we've had for so many years around walking, and make it appeal to, our modern, female consumer, because we've already got the Pro Walker with the male consumer already out in the marketplace. So we leaned to this new, wonderful, new fresh silhouette, and wanted to understand, how this would kind of how it would resonate with our Rockport consumer, and before we did significant investment to launch it. And we had CAD drawings, and we put this on the first Insight consumer survey, and I mean, really the results, Jim, it blew us away, and we were so excited to see that we got some of our best test scores to date through First Insight, and the consumer ascribed a very strong value to this collection. So what does this do for us? I mean, we've talked a little bit about this. It gives us the confidence to lean in. It gives us the confidence to invest behind the collection. And it also helped us sell the collection to a leading department store without even seeing the sample. But I think I started this off, by saying this was a fall winter 2022 kind of like objective. We've actually been able to launch this shoe now for spring summer 2022 with one of the better department stores in the US, and we're incredibly excited. Yep. But thanks to First Insight, we were able to get there. And if we didn't have the First Insight data, we wouldn't be launching this in spring summer 2022. It gave us the confidence.
Retailer the confidence, and it gave us the confidence to bring it in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think at the end of the day, also, it's allowing us to get ahead of the competition too. It allows us to launch new product that maybe the competition aren't launching. They're going to launch later. We're bringing it in beforehand. So no, it was a great example of a great result using First Insight.
Does this mean we don't need to make samples anymore? We could just sell everything off of First Insight scores?
I think that would be great. It would save us a lot of money.
That would be a huge
Obviously, you have a very large wholesale business, and I think a lot of the footwear companies here on the call today do as well. And we've talked a bit about using the data to sell in. So Lisa, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how you use it with the retail partners.
Yeah, I think for the last 2 seasons now, we have been leveraging the First Insight scores when selling our product, the full range, not just that one collection, into our retailer partners. I think we do this in a few ways. I think first, we do make sure we identify any key collections that have been tested and scored well with First Insights in our catalog, our seasonal catalogs. And that's just, we've heard from our retailer partners, it's just been so helpful for them to kind of, again, it's all about confidence, to know which styles have already been pre-approved and that they, want to feel confident bringing in to their line. So we have found that this just has greatly increased interest and acceptance of those styles. And then secondly, as mentioned earlier, we do use First Insight to help us also align on that right price point and promotional strategy for new styles. We leverage really aggressively that, that feature to understand what the consumer's willingness to pay is. And then it helps us have the right conversations internally to make sure we can hit those price points right out of the gate. And, again, maximizes margins for both us and the retailer partners.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been key.
And the last one here is probably back to you, Lisa. You mentioned earlier about how you're using First Insight to just learn about the customer in general, even separate from the product. How are they behaving? Are they walking more? How much more? Tell us how you leverage the platform to answer some of these strategic questions here.
Yeah. So this is the example I gave. I think this is, thinking back to the topic of this webinar, navigating disruption. This one is just such a fun example for us to think about because, when we were planning spring 21, what year are we in? When we were planning spring 21 last year, I think there was some optimism that, maybe things would be, the landscape might have looked different. You plan things out so far in advance. So I don't think anybody knew just how long the implications of COVID would be with us. So we had a really beautiful story ready to go that featured styles you'd be wearing to the office, which very few people were. And so, the team pulled up in February, March, and we were like, okay, we got to pivot. We need to pivot here. What do we have? And, we have great walking shoes. We always have. We've always been strong in that category, in that space. And, again, we got that inkling, or we knew, we were hearing that people were just out and walking a lot. And we said, let's just embrace that. Let's just lean into that. And so the survey was, I really honestly think it was probably late February that we started talking about this, and we learned quickly that National Walking Day is April 7th. So talk about being agile and nimble. We had about 6 weeks to plan this whole thing. So fortunately, the team at First Insight is super fast and agile themselves. We brainstormed this survey, got the questions out there, got responses almost immediately, turned around a press release, just got it right in under the wire of National Walking Day, and the response was phenomenal. I mean, millions of earned media impressions. It's and again, the Vogue article, it's this gift that keeps on giving. So so I think this is, something that we found a ton of value in and want to continue to use the portal to the consumer to help us understand more about what their real-time attitudes and behaviors are in the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And as you think about where we're going to head next together, what are your thoughts?
Gosh, where do I start with this one? Look, just through this conversation that we've had already, we've done a lot of partnering with First Insight at Rockport in I would say in a very short time period. And it's become more than just, a tool for us. It's become a new discipline for all of us. And it has forced us all to think more and more through the lens of the consumer and what they want and what they truly value. So I'd say our goals for the future are to certainly keep using First Insight, in a robust way, as we have been, looking for those entrepreneurial opportunities. Lisa mentioned being agile and nimble, but we have to be entrepreneurial in the way that we look at things, and leverage the consumer data to outperform our competition at the end of the day, because that's what we all want to do. We want to take market share away from the competition in a healthy way, and we're able to do this. Certainly partnering with First Insight, this really helps. We see great opportunities ahead, like I say, to use First Insights more robustly. I think I mentioned ILR and FLR, ensuring that, we utilize First Insight earlier in our product development process, and to simply answer key questions to help, solve, the big opportunities. And, I know Lisa will continue to use the platform to help us optimizing, our marketing and the stories that, we can tell, through our digital and retail, platforms. But not only our stories, but, how we get stories out there in a way that Rockport can break through the noise and certainly be heard by the consumers. Just learning about the Rockport brand. Simple as that. So
absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I think you're right. Like, there's such an opportunity. Marketing is, the stories we tell are an investment. It's another investment, just like, investing into the supply chain of new products. We are investing in a story we want to tell. It's a lot of time, energy, and cost to produce, great, big, fancy photo shoots. And so I think, it's an opportunity for us to leverage the First Insight data to make sure, just like anything else, if we're going to lean in, that we've already know it's a product or a collection that's been pre-approved by the consumer. And so that's one, like what we choose to market. And then I think two, how we market it. And I think we've shown some examples of really understanding the features and benefits and understanding what the consumer responds to. We actually, another example I don't think we shared in here is we had a new kind of brand that we were getting ready to launch, sub brand under Rockport, and we wanted to understand like how to present it to the consumer. Like, what are some different? We had a couple of different mood boards that we thought could paint a different picture in the consumer's minds. We tested those, and there was one that was a resounding winner. And so that was then when we went through the photo shoot, we made sure we used that as our guide. So lots of opportunities.
So, Jim, what can I say? I think that, bottom line is we're really excited about the future for Rockport and First Insights, and we look forward to the continued partnership, with your team. It's been an amazing partnership. It's been a wonderful collaboration, and you've been a big part in helping us, navigate some of these, challenging times with, all the consumer surveys that you've done for us. And, we've truly appreciated that partnership. So thank you to you and your team.
Yeah, well, I would add also to that, from the very beginning when we first met with you, we could tell that you had a very dynamic management team, very forward-looking, willingness to use data, interested in hearing from the customer, and so all those sort of ingredients were there, and so it's made for a very smooth process. Then it comes down to executing, and then having the teams actually use the data and leverage the data, make decisions. And so it's been a great partnership from our perspective as well, because your company's been very open to all of that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. So let's go ahead to some questions here. And we have about 10 minutes left, and maybe Matt, I'll kick it back over to you. Do we have some questions coming in?
Yeah, thanks, Jim and Stephen and Lisa. We appreciate this conversation. I can tell you that FDRA uses First Insight as well for consumer surveying on sustainability and other things that we help leverage for the entire industry. So to hear it, the specificity of the issues that Rockport is looking at, or the opportunities, I should say, and leveraging the partnership with First Insight is fascinating. We do have a number of questions that have come in, and we encourage you, if you have others, to drop them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. We'll be happy to answer them. This one's for Stephen. Stephen, talk about how you operationalize your partnership with First Insight. Are you changing processes? How do you work with the First Insight team? How does that kind of all come together?
Oh, that's a great question to kick things off, Matt. All right, let me think about this one. Look, of course, like any change, this did take some time and thought to make sure we integrated the power, of that consumer data into the product development process.
Yep.
So that was key. I'd say right from the start, Matt, the whole team, quickly understood the value of what this could, bring to the table. And so, I felt like everyone was truly on board with working us through this process and operationalizing it. So, but for those of you in the footwear business, it's a timely and complex process to designing and delivering just simply a pair of shoes. And we had, a very tight, disciplined process that was, I think a pretty well-oiled machine for the most part. We can still improve, I guess. So to add testing like this required a new way of thinking for all of us. And we started with, the strong collaboration, early in the development process between, the product, sales and marketing leads. To think through, what questions we had for the up and coming season. And so it was a true collaboration and working sessions, between, like I say, the product and the marketing, business units. We decided to, I think we started small, and really test out the testing process on a small number of items.
I love test and learn here. I love that we had to test our testing.
Yeah, we have to test our testing. And what was really important, Matt, was, how do we evaluate the benefits of that? And as well as kind of like figure out the best way to fit into existing development timelines. And once we got those first tests underway, we never looked back. And today, today we are testing at, all the key milestones throughout the development calendar. It's now a project task on the calendar. So, we've been able to truly incorporate in the appropriate times to discuss strategically. It's like I said earlier, you get people in a room, you tend, and it's a good thing, but people tend to shoot from the hip, so how can we discuss strategically using data? That's key. What should we test? And then, on the flip side of all that, Lisa, we spend the right time discussing together what the test actually told us.
What are the
we brainstorm that, and that's really interesting. And I tell you what, it's really, really powerful. And so, I mean,
I think I would just add, I hear you say this all, Stephen. Yeah, I think for sure it's like, I was joking about the test and learn, testing the testing, but that is a little bit our approach. We started because you can kind of just paralyze yourself with just thinking about it or talking about it. We're like, let's just go and do tests. We're really good about that. We just take action.
And
we took the action, we tested. We might look back now and say, well, those tests were, we could have optimized the way we tested, but we just started and we learned And then we rolled it forward, those learnings into the next test, and we learned, then we rolled it forward. And I think, every time we've kind of taken another batch of tests, we've gotten smarter and more strategic about how to leverage the testing.
No doubt. And I think, I would conclude, on this, but just by saying, I think the support and the speed that we get from First Insight, has made this, really, easy to incorporate into existing timelines without pushing out those development dates and getting our product team all flustered. So that's that helps us at the end of the day too. So hey, long-winded answer to that one, Matt. Apologies.
No worries, no worries. As you were talking, I was thinking that the entrepreneurial word, right? That test and react, that constant engagement and doing it in a very quick and clearing out the red tape and the bureaucracy, the corporate bureaucracy, and getting right to it. And it sounds like it's been an effective tool for you. Lisa, I want to talk to you about with the success of the marketing insights that you've gleaned with your partnership with First Insight, particularly around the walking trend that we're seeing in the COVID era. What are your other plans to kind of leverage this digital tool to drive more marketing insights to other?
I mean, I think, again, like I said, that walking one was just this like amazing magic of just like a quick idea and a test and out there. And, then we tried to repeat that. And over the summer, we worked with the First Insight team and we fielded actually another survey to try to understand the consumer mindset as we thought they were all going to be going back to the office at Labor Day. And it is actually funny looking back. I mean, it was probably the last week of July that we fielded that. And it was funny, the response back from the consumer, they were ready. They were ready to go back to the office. They were ready to go shopping and buy new shoes. They were ready to plan their outfits. And then clearly, I think as every day passed in August, every week passed, the news got more and more, scary with Delta. So I think that obviously dialed back, but it's good. I think it's a testament to the teams, wanting to stay on top of where the consumer's mindset was as they have another really important transition, which it will come. It's going to come eventually. So we're going to just stay on top of that and make sure that we have that kind of ability to tap into the consumer when we have a sense that is coming. And then, I just keep going back to the conversation we've had. And honestly, this is like a new brainstorm that's coming to my head as we speak about, just increasing the use of the consumer data for our marketing storytelling, and really making sure that we're a brand at the end of the day, and brands are powerful because of what they represent to the consumer and how they paint a picture of a lifestyle. And we want to make sure that we're always staying on top of what is resonates the most, and how to make sure that the Rockport brand is breaking through that noise and that we're connecting to our consumer in the right way. So I think for sure you're going to continue to see us use the consumer portal to help understand how to market better to our consumer.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, right? Because every CEO in our industry will stand on a stage and talk about how customer is king. We got to stay close to the customer. The customer dictates what we do in our business. But then how do you take that verbiage and then put it into kind of practical action? And this insight helps you do that day in and day out. I think that's key.
Absolutely. We're all trying to reach the consumer in the exact same places.
Yeah.
I think you need to be able to stand out quickly.
Yeah. And Matt, I think at the end of the day, what it also allows you, we're talking about the stories, the concepts, the stories, the product. With all these opportunities to test with the consumers, product marketing that we've done just at the recent FLR, what this allows us to do as a brand, we're able to home in on the stories that we want to tell at the up and coming, selling. So if we think about fall winter 2022 now, we're going to be going into a global sales meeting in November, and then we have our sell-ins with the accounts. But already today, because of the data that we've received from First Insight, from product and marketing, we know the big stories that we're already going to be able to tell. So when we get to GSM, Matt, we're off to the races. We can tell a very powerful story also at that point in time to our partners, around the world. So it really is impactful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. Jim, I'll pose the last question to you. You'll get the last word, my friend.
Okay.
We heard about kind of the onboarding process from the Rockport perspective from Stephen. How quickly can First Insight deploy and activate and get up and running from your side of the equation?
Usually it's a few weeks. So, we're up and running within a week or two. We can be running tests a week after that and results just a few days after that. So there's nothing to install. It's all cloud-based. That's how we like to work. We say we work at the speed of retail. All our retail partners are trying to make decisions very, very quickly, get answers and reads. So it's really just a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it's quick, right? So when you think about the speed to market, which is the goal of every footwear brand on the planet, part of that getting to market is working with a company like First Insight. So it's great that you guys are that effective and efficient in getting up and running and partnering with our brands and our customers. So I want to thank each of you, Stephen, Lisa, and Jim, for your participation in this webinar, for this discussion. This will reverberate throughout Kingdom FDRA, if you will, as we push it out on demand with our podcast Shoe and Show. And so thanks for joining us, and thanks for being a part of this really important discussion.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
of course.
opportunity.
So if you're
also, just maybe
Yeah,
I
go
could
ahead.
add, if anybody's interested in the presentation here, just go ahead and email me directly and I can get it out to you.
That's right. That's great. So for those of you who are just listening to the audio of this, it's jim.shea@firstinsight.com. You can email Jim directly and he'll send you the presentation deck. We look forward to welcoming you to another FDRA event here in the near future. If you're watching this live or on demand or via the podcast, thanks for joining us. And you can always email us at info@fdra.org, and we'll be happy to connect you with our friends at First Insight so you can get going on critical customer analytics. And so with that, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next FDRA event. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.